Thank you very much for joining us for day number 5 of 7 Days of Hope. My name is Scott. I'm a member of the Hope team, mostly behind the scenes or doing the technical part. I'd like to introduce you to first Trina Paulus, who is the author of Hope for the Flowers. She has some very special things to share with you. So Trina, take it away, please.
Thank you so much for being with us during these 6 days, one or more, because we're doing this in a very rare time in human history, I think, when the whole world is dealing with the same thing in a sense, the same worries, the same fears, but it's affecting everyone in a different way. Some are just trying to stay well. Some are worried about the jobs they've lost. Some are sick, and some mourn people who have died. And this is all over the world. So I know that these technology things we have now give us a chance to reach around the world. And that's what we wanted to do with these 7 days, reach around to people and reach around the world with some hope. So we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but we're spending time trying to think about how we can use these strange months we have right now of isolation or working when we're maybe not feeling so well and would rather not be working. These strange, strange months to be preparing ourselves for really changing the world in the beautiful direction that it can be. And tonight I am thrilled to have part of 4 of my sisters from the Grail movement that I belonged to for 70 years, actually, to be joined with us. And they are making community in the South Bronx, which happened because of the coronavirus. So it's a very strange community in the epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic right now. And they'll tell you more about what it is to live together, intergeneration, and between generations, you can see it right there, and also between races and cultures, and Uganda and Mozambique. We're going to have you sing, I guess, now. Go ahead. That's a sign that came up to sing. Go, right. Do it. Do your song.
In a circle of friends, in a circle of sound, all our voices will blend when we touch common ground. We join our voices. We join our voices. We join our voices for the world.
Wow, what a wonderful way to start. And Marisol has another way to start. That's the one who's going to you're going to hear next.
Hello, hello. How exciting to have Abida and Sharon and Noella and Mary Kay with us. What a beautiful, beautiful song. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. Thank you so much. So I just wanted to let you guys know how you're going to be able to communicate with us and really encourage you to engage, to ask questions, to give your reflections. I'm going to do my very best. I have a couple of chat boxes that I'm manning. If you're having trouble on mobile device, I highly suggest you go to YouTube. And if you're on the live page, you will see a link right below this video that will lead you there, because some people were having a hard time with the live chat that were on mobile. But whether you're on YouTube or the live page, we will be communicating that way. You can ask questions and we will engage. And thank you again so much for joining us. Now, the one thing I want to do right before we start, we're going to go into an exercise that helps me every day, because especially during this time, the one thing we need to do is just breathe. So we're going to go into an exercise right after that into the chapter reading, and then we will be right back here live with you. So together, let's just breathe. Take it away, Scott. Hello, fellow Hopers, family, friends, and Hope Revolutionaries. It's Marisol. Welcome to the 7 Days of Hope. I'm part of a wonderful Hope team. We've been working hard with Trina behind the scenes, and we hope you have a wonderful time tonight. Or today, it could be today, depending on where you are in the world, right? But we're so happy that you've joined us. Thank you for trusting us with this time together. Before we go on to our live presentation, and I'm sorry you might have to put up with this few minutes every night, but I want to bring us into state. I want us to all just take a moment to just relax our bodies and stand still and just acknowledge however we feel. However we feel, just acknowledge that. And then let's take a deep breath, just a deep inhale, but when we take that breath, let it be the breath of hope. So let's take that breath together. And we're gonna hold for 3, 1, 2, 3, and we're gonna release whatever cares, whatever things we need to let go. We're just going to release it as we exhale that breath. And we're gonna do it 2 more times. We're gonna inhale that breath of hope. And we're gonna hold it for 1, 2, 3. And on the exhale, we're gonna just release whatever we need to release and let go, whatever we need to let go. And one more time, breathe in that breath of hope. And breathe out whatever we have to release. And when you're ready to get back into the room, we are ready for you. Welcome and enjoy the 7 Days of Hope.
Today we're going to read chapter 5. And what's happened before is, of course, our little hero Stripe is born as a baby and he eats and eats and eats until he's eaten so much that he feels he has to look for something more to life. And he comes down from the tree that he was born on and goes looking into all the holes and seeing all the bugs and meeting other caterpillars, and nothing is satisfying him. And then he and these other caterpillars see this big pile and this pillar, and they go closer and they see it's a pillar made up of caterpillars, just caterpillars climbing over each other. And then the others go in, they don't know what's going to happen, but they all climb in, and finally Stripe does too. So he climbs and discovers the trick is he has to climb over others, or others climb over him, and then he meets Yellow. That changes everything. It doesn't make the pile look very good. And so they decide to come down, and they do come down, and they love each other, and they play, and they eat, until Stripe gets bored again and feels he has to go back on the pillar. So he's made that decision, and he gets back on. And in the meantime, Yellow is desolate, and she goes looking for what's the next step. What is it? She knows that she needed to wait and not get back on that pillar, but she doesn't know what else. So she comes across an old caterpillar, and she has the wisdom to stop her own search and see if she can help him. This is sort of the secret of the book, actually, right there. She asks, "Can I help?" And so she's given the secret of what she's supposed to do, and then she decides she's going to be a butterfly and go through the cocoon like she sees the old caterpillar doing. So now we pick up where Stripe is. We leave that happy section and we go to this one. So it's a pretty grim scene. It's a pretty grim scene. Chapter 5. Stripe made much faster progress this time. He was bigger and stronger since he had taken time out. From the beginning, he was determined to get to the top. He especially avoided meeting the eyes of other crawlers. He knew how fatal such contact could be. He tried not to think of Yellow. He disciplined himself neither to feel nor to be distracted. Stripe didn't seem just disciplined to others. He seemed ruthless. Even among climbers, he was special. He didn't think he was against anybody. He was just doing what he had to if he was to get to the top. "Don't blame me if you don't succeed. It's a tough life. Just make up your mind, he would have said had any caterpillar complained. Then one day, he was near his goal. Stripe had done well, but when light finally filtered down from the top, he was close to exhaustion. At this height, there was almost no movement. All held their positions with every skill a lifetime of climbing had taught them. Every small move counted terribly. There was no communication. Only the outsides touched. They were like cocoons to one another. Then one day Stripe heard a crawler above him saying, "None of us can get any higher without getting rid of them." Soon after, he felt tremendous pressure and shaking. Then came screams and falling bodies. Then silence, lots more light, and less weight from above. Stripe felt awful with his new knowledge. The mystery of the pillar was clearing. He now knew what had happened to the 3 caterpillars. He now knew what must always happen on the pillar. Frustration surged through Stripe. But as he was agreeing this was the only way up, he heard a tiny whisper from the top. "There's nothing here at all." It was answered by another. "Quiet, fool. They'll hear you down the pillar. Where they want to get, that's what's here." Stripe felt frozen. To be so high and not high at all. It only looked good from the bottom. The whisper came again. "Look over there. Another pillar. And there too. Everywhere." Stripe became angry as well as frustrated. "My pillar," he moaned. "Only one of thousands. Millions of caterpillars climbing nowhere. Something is really wrong, but what else is there?" His life with Yellow seemed so far away. That wasn't it either. Not quite. Yellow. He let her image fill his being. "You knew something, didn't you? Was it courage to wait?" Maybe she was right. I wish I were with her. I could go down, he thought. I'd look ridiculous, but maybe it's better than what's happening here. But Stripe's thought was interrupted by bursts of movement all over his level. Each seemed to be making a last effort to find some entry to the top. But with every push, the top layer tightened. Finally, one caterpillar gasped, "Unless we try together, nobody will reach the top. Maybe if we give one big push." "They can't hold us down forever." But before they could act, there were cries and commotion of another kind. Stripe struggled to the edge to see the cause. A brilliant yellow winged creature was circling the pillar, moving freely. A wonderful sight. How did it get so high without climbing? When Stripe poked out his head, The creature seemed to recognize him. It extended its legs and tried to grab him. Stripe caught himself just before being pulled out of the pie. The brilliant creature let go and looked sadly into his eyes. That look activated excitement Stripe hadn't felt since he first saw the pillar. Words from the past returned. Butterflies alone. Is this a butterfly? And what did it mean? The top, they'll see. It was all so strange, and yet like it was supposed to be. And those eyes, with the look of yellow, could it be? Such impossible thoughts, yet the excitement inside wouldn't stop. He grew happy. Somehow he could escape. He could be carried away. But as this possibility became real, something else grew inside. He felt he shouldn't escape like this. Looking into the creature's eyes, he could hardly bear the love he saw there. He felt unworthy. He wanted to change, to make up for all the times he had refused to look at the other. He tried to tell her what he felt. He stopped struggling. The others stared at him as though he were mad. The end of chapter 5. I can hardly bear this chapter. It's so heavy. It's so awful. And it feels so real to the world we're in, with so many people trying to get to some imaginary good thing because so many people are trying to go there when they are these beautiful butterflies inside. And we know in the book ends up a happy ending. Most that there's going to be a happy ending, but it sure isn't happy right now. And I'm always moved myself by this chapter, that things can be different, and we spend so much of our life trying to be competitive with each other, and I want to hear what all of you who are with me on this video right here in the room have to say yourselves, because it's so real. So please just speak up if you have something to say, any of you.
I think like with you, it's a kind of radio silence out here. I hear that it's a beautiful reading, someone said, but we'd love to hear your reflections. But in the meantime, anyone else in our company here would like to share, that would be beautiful, while our audience is getting their thoughts together. W. Cotton says, is such a profound story. One of the things I have to say when Stripe says, is it ridiculous to climb down? He's asking the question because we don't want to look foolish, right? So many times we are stopped by what we should be doing because we're afraid to look foolish. We're afraid of what people are going to think. We're afraid of what people are going to say. And Father Nickus, one time we read Hope together. And one of the things he said at this particular chapter, he said, if you expect the miraculous, you better be willing to look ridiculous. And that, as sad as this chapter is, it always reminds me of that quote from Father Nickus.
Yeah. I wonder what role humility plays as well. And maybe prior to making a life's change, you have to, have the universe tap you on the shoulder and then maybe hit, shake you a little bit. But some people really need to have a 2x4 by the side of the head before they wake up and they think, oh my gosh, okay, well, maybe there's something else other than what I had thought it would be. And that's maybe what happened to Stripe as well, that he thought he was on the right path, but then, reality or the universe or something else tapped him on the shoulder and then shook him a little bit. And, well, we know what happened next.
The idea that there's nothing up there when you've worked so hard for something is really a tough thing to deal with. And that's what he had to face. And that it only looked good from the bottom. And that often some things look good at the bottom. A lot of wealth, fame, looks good from the bottom. And it looks good from the top for quite a while, probably, in human life. But the top of the pillar is very, very narrow. And there's so much room in the sky for butterflies. I don't think we could ever have too many butterflies in the sky. So,
Trina, someone wants to say, how can we leave the dog-eat-dog world? But before we do, someone else asked, what was the last sentence? They missed your last sentence of the book. So that last sentence, Pat, is that Stripe, he stopped struggling and the others stared at him as though he were mad. And Laura wants to know, well, how can we leave the dog-eat-dog world? How do you climb off the pillar and be okay?
well, what do you think? How can you do it? You have to decide that, I don't know, you have to first start to look inside. And that's one of the gifts of this particular time, to really take time to look inside and get help. All over the internet right now, I must get 15, 20 things a day that's offering me all kinds of free development programs of one kind or another, physical health and mental health and meditation help. And you have to choose and reach out and be kind. Be kind is critical. And that's what these caterpillars were not doing. They were not being kind. So I guess being kind pretty well keeps you off the pillar, because somebody will walk over you and you won't walk over them. But you can be happier. A parable is meant to be taken by everybody where they're at that time. So I really always hesitate to tell you what I think, because I think differently when I read it at different times and different circumstances as well. So a parable is wonderful like that. It's and I never interpreted, and I never really gave permission to the people who wanted to publish chapter by chapter instructions for teachers, because all a teacher has to do is read this story with the kids and let them do something with it, like painting or whatever, or make a play. It takes care of itself. It doesn't need us to tell anybody what it means, I think.
Mary Kay, earlier when we were on our planning meeting, I know you said that you had some reflections you wanted to share about this chapter. I'd love to hear them.
No, it changes quite regularly, as we've been talking right now. And I'm just remembering this whole, the situation of how you feel too proud to admit that you shouldn't be there. And I remember when I was quite young, of a family who came from Mexico, and they didn't want to be. I'm from Michigan. They didn't want to be there anymore, but they could not admit to their family back in Mexico that they had made a mistake, that the streets were not paved with gold here, that they weren't able to get all of the wonderful things that they thought life was going to bring to them. So it's that chapter speaks in many ways.
By the way, I think it might be a good thing to share that when I was first doing this, I was advised to end the ending, to make the ending right there, right where we're at right now. And I felt, no, he had to come down that pillar. He had to come down. And the argument to me was, grace doesn't mean you have to turn around. But for me, grace did. It was grace that allowed him to turn around and come down. And he had to somehow do some penance or karma, deal with karma, or something had to happen. So we had this argument about the nature of grace. And I said, well, they could have lots of butterflies coming and taking all the caterpillars off, if Stripes feels bad about that. But that didn't seem right, because that is a way that grace could work, but it also works to turn us around when we've been bad, when we've done wrong things, to allow us to make up for them somewhat. So we could spend the whole time talking more about this, but I think that I want to hear some of your stories, because this is a very special group thrown together by coronavirus. So there you are in the South Bronx on 138th Street in a very, very busy area that we want to hear about how that is. And I don't know who's going first. Who's going first? Okay, Mary Kay, welcome.
As Trina says, I'm Mary Kay. But it's not just the coronavirus that brought us together, because we all came together because every March we come together for something called the Commission on the Status of Women. What the coronavirus has done is they're stuck here in our wonderful New York. But first I want to just say a couple of words about the Grail, because as Trina has said, the 5 of us all belong to the International Grail Movement, which was begun in the early 20s in the Netherlands, very quickly spread out all the continents, and it's rooted in the Catholic Church, but along the ways, other spiritual paths joined us, and we are moving into the future and to what are we being called to do at this moment of time. In the Grail, we often refer to it as the elbow of time. So at this elbow of time, what are we all being called to do? And I think Hope for the Flowers gives us some little indication along the way if we really reflect on it. The Grail is in about 25 countries. There are 3 countries represented here. And we have big projects, we have small projects, but we're all working together to make this be a better world. We're in search, that's why it's the Grail. It's a search for the Holy Grail. We haven't found it yet. We're still searching, that we're searching for truth and justice and peace. And that's what has brought all of us to the Grail. Since I was a little girl, I was very interested in issues of justice. But it's one thing, I'm not a very charismatic person. I don't do things by myself. I'm not a big leader. I knew I had to work within a team. So when Trina and Scott and Marisol talk about the Hope team, I think, yeah, that is so important, to be part of a team, to be part of a community of people working together. So this is the rest of our community that's living and working together for these couple of months. We don't know how long they're still going to be here.
And can you tell us where you guys are from? Because I know you said 3 countries represented, but our viewers don't know who everyone is or where everyone's from.
Okay, so what we'll do is just now introduce ourselves and where we're from, so you know me. Okay.
I'm Noella from Uganda. I'm a Grail member, and I'm very happy to be in this community.
And I want to just go in and say that Noella is also a computer engineer and an advocate for girls there in her community. So,
Hello, everybody. I'm Sharon. I'm originally from Connecticut and now living in the South Bronx.
and Sharon is a community worker, retired from pediatric nursing and community.
Hi, I'm Abida. I'm from Mozambique, also GRIL member. I advocate for girls' rights, women's rights also.
And she is an environmentalist, a forest engineer, community development agent, among other things. Now, these are pretty accomplished people. And Mary Kay, who is speaking to you, was a social worker and worked for 35 years as a director of religious education in the Catholic Bronx, the Catholic parish right up the street from where they live. Involved with making sure young women and girls' voices are heard at the UN and in the Grail. So you can see I'm very proud and happy to have associated myself with such a movement all my life. So go on with your presentations, please.
Yes, so we'll move then from what I had just said about the Commission on the Status of Women and what it brought us together here in the first place, to Sharon will share something with us.
So, hello, everybody. In the 60s, I went with a team of volunteers to work with the Grail in Brazil. And I worked on a social action team. We we climbed the mountains every day and visited people. And it was a time in Brazil of a global crisis. We were part of, within the whole world, oppressed people were beginning to rise up and to speak their voice and to ask for justice. And it was a time when Paulo Freire, an educator, realized that 50% of the Brazilian population was illiterate and began the conscientization movement. Then came the military dictatorship and began the tortures and the imprisonment of just everyday normal people. Following that time, then I returned to the United States. During that time, I learned so much about other people and other cultures. I learned so much about myself. When I came back to the United States, it was the hugest cultural shock I'd ever experienced. I landed in New York with all the buildings and all the people and all the movements and all the material things that you could possibly want. And I was totally lost. After a time of looking around and searching and experimenting, I found myself in the South Bronx. The South Bronx was also part of this global crisis. People said, the Bronx is burning. Every day there were more fires than you could count. The buildings were being gutted. They were falling to the ground. There was abandoned lots. And so I became part of a team that every weekend we joined people from all over the United States and even other countries. We started cleaning up the lots. We picked up the heroin needles. We picked up the trash. We began rebuilding and making something new. So it was an experience that really changed my life. And then along the way, we organized and we renewed the Bronx, made it something different. And I started working then with a team of connecting with the United Nations. We started working with the Working Group on Girls and preparing for the Commission on the Status of Women. So that's what we were doing this year, like we do every year. And Noella was here as an intern since January with a young woman from Mexico. Then Abida arrived in March with 2 girls from Mozambique. We were waiting for other girls to arrive to participate and do panel presentations about the situations in their countries. And suddenly, we were in another global crisis. What we said in the Bronx, when the Bronx was burning and people thought everyone would leave, the people said, we're still here. Well, when the COVID-19 happened and we realized we were in another global crisis and had to completely change everything we were doing for the Commission on the Status of Women, we worked hard and did some presentations. We had an open house. We had sessions hosted by Salvation Army. We had some people here from Loretto Sisters, and we did a video. And then it ended. We managed to get the 2 girls out and home, but Noella, and Abida were not able to leave. So we looked at each other and we said, we're still here.
Yes.
We had to rearrange everything and make a community and spend our time. How are we going to spend our days? What were we going to do that was different, that would keep us together with all the anxieties and the worries that we had about everything. We had a tremendous global awareness that was actually helpful, because in every place of the world, the virus was beginning, and we were beginning to hear what the impact was. So we planned our schedule. We do more prolonged reflection and prayer. We do meditative exercises. We have had some fabulous meals, each of us taking turn to cook and learn, and keeping in touch with the world. And I guess that's a question I have in my mind. We've been seeing so many signs of hope. Trina talked about hope for the flowers. And in the midst of all this, that's what we have seen. Little things that people have done, and being more aware of the world as a whole. And I guess that's my question: how are we going to remember? What are some of the things that we will remember that have given us hope?
Well, we have Wayne here. He says, I believe that problems create beneficial rearrangements. When we get to the other side, we are in a better situation than this side. When we let go, we have the opportunity to fly.
Well done, Wayne. Yes.
And we have Pat, who says she remembers those fires in the Bronx. She said, along with Harlem. It was burning along with Harlem, she says.
Yeah. So again, I'm Noella from Uganda. As Sharon has shared, I've been here because I came to be an intern, because we have a link to UN. So after that moment when they said CSW is cancelled, preparing for 3 months, my first time in the US for a big day, and it is cancelled. It was a shock. I couldn't believe what I had, but that is it. I had to first accept, yes, it's cancelled. What next? So what next was relocate, do something else, accept the situation and get something better. Like in the book, I'll appreciate Trina. I saw this book when I was around 13. I grew up in the brain comic back in my country. I saw the color, being a kid, yellow is nice. So it is attractive butterfly. I didn't take, Africans, most Africans get ready. So I didn't mind about it. So when I grew up around 16, I liked the book. So I said, let me read, maybe there's something. I read a bit of it. I didn't also take it as a point. But in 2018, I came out with an idea of making a newsletter for my country. So I picked something from this. Unfortunately, I didn't publish the newsletter, but it is there. I was inspired by the book and did something. But because of some reasons, I didn't publish. So I thank Trina for writing this because I was inspired by it. So back to the situation. So in the community where I am, first of all, you see we are different. Different in color, different in age. I'm the youngest. But I believe this is a cocoon. Is it the right word? In the book. Mm-hmm. I take the crisis as a cocoon. They accepted, the caterpillars accepted to be a cocoon because they wanted something better. It was a decision to be taken. Yes, because of very many reasons, we are in a cocoon, we're in this crisis. But I think if we take it positive, we shall have a great environment afterwards. I propose, or I have some question in my head. How are families now in the community, in their families? Those days parents used to come at around 8, they are back at home. They don't know about their kids. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they don't want. But now 24/7 they are together. I think this is the best time parents to know more about their children, what they want, to guide them, and also the young ones, the youth. They should learn a lot from the old ones. These people have a lot. If we share and if they share their experience and we share what we know, what they don't know, the technology, I'm seeing Trina is really making an effort to use the technology. So if we take the crisis as a positive, I think we shall have a better life thereafter.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautifully said, Noella. Beautifully said.
With this crisis, with this global crisis, can emerge a beautiful things as we start to call it a new normal. A new normal is what also every day four of us try to build up. MK and Shah was mentioned about the work of the GRAIL is doing, the connection with the UN. I can go back home. I'm from a tribe that is matrilineal, that the women is empowered. As we can see, I have my head wrap that symbolize my identity, my courage as a woman that I have. And this bright color you can get that combined with my necklace as a gift from MK. Yeah, is a symbol of power. We all have a power. We all have something to share, to build up with other people. Go to the chapter 5. You see that togetherness, importance of being together, not be someone that want to climb and be on the top. I was discriminated when I was a young girl because of my identity, my cultural identity. But my mother, the powerful woman, taught me and showed me the way to climb, but not climb alone, to climb the mountain with others. That came, that calling of working with the girls, empower young women that is being discriminated in our society with patriarchy and the cultural norms and social norms. And then I decided to embark in that journey of empower girls and young women. This is one of the work that I'm doing. That's why I end up here. I'm doing this journey with MK and Shah since 2007, bring girls and young women from different corners of the world, using this platform, UN platform, CSW, to empower, to uplift to be a leaders of today and tomorrow. Combined with that, the calling also of being environmentalist. I try to create that connection with the universe and with our creation and become work in my garden, organic garden, not alone, but with others, bring other people, do things together. That's why come the question that I have, how we can sustain the value of togetherness in this time of crisis that we are looking for hope, how we can sustain the value of togetherness.
How can we sustain the value of togetherness? What kind of things are you guys doing at home differently than before this whole virus started? I know that it was said, right? You're spending so much more time with your family. I was just on a call with a mom who said she hasn't seen her son as much as she's had in the last month in a very long time. And families are now forced to be together. And it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing. Whereas before, you know, we're always so busy. To be able to really have this time of unity and shared togetherness, and what can we do to make it a positive thing, that whatever we're doing, we're making a positive impact on this world in one way or another. But I'd love for you all to share your stories, because I know you have them. We have the Looney Agency here, Trina, talking about, the question was, as people go through this transformation, what advice would you say about coming off the pillar? So
Well, I answered that before that I don't want to interpret it because it's
right. So maybe it's not for you. Maybe it's for all of us.
yes.
Ladies, do you have any advice about climbing off the pillar?
Mary Kay is here with her
I don't
advice.
have advice about climbing off the pillar or not. But one of the things that happens during this time of being together is I'm going through files and throwing things away. And I just found a letter from somebody, it's a evaluative report from a 15-year-old girl who we took to Mexico. And she said, before this trip, my mind was set on the American motto, the world revolves around me and only me. In some strange way, however, the Mexican youth and women in just 2 weeks were able to change that. They helped me realize and understand the meaning of the words help, compassion, brother and sisterhood, and friendship. They touched my life and my way of thinking. That's why all of us, the four of us, are really committed to continue working with young people. When I saw this, and I know this young woman now, and the beautiful person that she is, and to think, we offer those kinds of opportunities. That's the hope. It's the hope for those beautiful little blossoms there that they are going to flower. It's the hope for the caterpillar that's going to become the butterfly. And so we just try to make the way so that the caterpillar doesn't get stepped on, that there's milkweed growing so that they can lay their eggs and we can get the butterflies. So that's the work that we're trying to do so that the young people can bring us forward in this world.
Well, I get Erin saying we are being more productive and we're getting out in nature more now, which is a beautiful thing because we have to keep social distancing, but that doesn't mean we have to stay inside. We could still get out in nature. We could still go out in our gardens. We could still do what we can to connect with the earth. And we have Gabby saying opening up is a good way to show togetherness because we would realize that we are not as different as society has always made us seem. This live stream is wonderful.
Yeah, and I also believe this time round, we have more time with our children. At the age of around 5, I believe this is where the kids dream. I want to be a pilot. I want to be an engineer. So if you sit down with the kid, try to dialect, see how best the kid can go to that dream. We dream at the age of 5, you say, I can be a pilot. I remember when I was young, I wanted to be a pharmacist. Mm-hmm. But when I reached some age, I didn't want biology. And it was one of the subjects to be a pharmacist. I was like, no, I cannot because I don't want biology and I will not be first because I don't want it. So I was like, no, let me try engineering. And I liked it from around 13, 14. I said I'll have a computer for myself. So I focused on my physics and mathematics. And my mom guided me in that line. Because I told her I don't want biology. Though I wanted to be a pharmacist, but I don't want it. So this time round, please, if families can sit with their children, guide them. As I said, I'm a girls advocate. In my free time over the weekends, because we have schools, we have projects as schools. So I go and empower these girls. At the age of 15, girls are in another scenario of life. Some of them just drop out of school. So I take time, they talk to me, we share. So, and I empower them, please stay in school. And they are empowered in that scenario.
Wonderful. Someone wants to know, Rena wants to know, is there a Grail community in the Philippines?
Oh, yes, there is.
Yes.
So Rena, we will have to get that information to you. So there is a Grail community in the Philippines.
Now in Manila and Mindanao and other places.
Yes.
Because of this work with girls and Hope for the Flowers, like Abida, if you could just share with the two girls about the two girls we brought here and the project that the Grail has with that shelter.
Oh, yes. We brought 2 girls from Mozambique. They are girls Okay, you cannot call that this a street girl, but they come from a different situation. One girl was end up in a situation to be a child marriage. So she was married to a man 35 years than her, but she managed to escape for that situation, and then she ended up in the shelter. The other girl is a girl that was mistreated at home, and then she ran away from home, and she ended up to be on the street, living in the street. After some time, she ended up being in the shelter. And we work with the girl back in Mozambique. We work with those girls to help them the process of healing, come from that trauma, uplift them, bring up their self-esteem. And we are working with this group of girls. And then this opportunity that those two girls had come here and share with others their story was so powerful, and it helped them in this process of healing. Although the CSW was canceled, but Shah was mentioned that we find a way. Okay, it was a shock, heartbreaking, and then was a short term, and then we make opportunity to create other activities for them. This is one of the work that we do with the girls, and we've been bring girls from different parts of the world to attend this CSW, and this what we saw. What we can say, we see those girls emerge. The girls only need the opportunity. You give them opportunity and then they'll bloom. That power to contribute for the development of their communities, for the world, you see it after that.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It's such a privilege to be part of who you are for me, and to see young people taking the baton in this elbow of time, this new elbow of time. So I just am grateful that you decided to share some of the work that you're doing to make community work across a lot of differences, but we have one goal together. And
It's hard to believe the hour flew by already.
yes, and I know you do a lot of social work, and people might be curious about what this thing is that I am wearing. This was given to me at a protest right here in Montclair at a grocery store, when many of us for a number of years boycotted grapes in favor of helping for better working conditions for the workers in the fields in California and Florida. And it's a privilege. This was handed to me by Cesar Chavez. Those of you who know the farmers movement know that he was a very important person in that. He started this, and he's now not with us. He's a butterfly now, that through the big cocoon, he's gotten through the very big. That's the really big cocoon we're headed toward, is when we don't know what's at the other side yet, but we hope and we pray. So I guess those are my closing words today. And I just feel in a way I didn't need to give them, because they've been given by all of you so beautifully. So I thank you very much.
A luta continua. The struggle continues.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow at 7 o'clock. Enjoy this sing-along.
Without butterflies, the world will have few flowers, so grow your wings and fly. Feed the plants and float by the river, and we'll be here by your side.
Make great choices and take big risks. asks if they're good for you, and the rainforest. Sing really loud and don't be afraid. You are the stuff of which butterflies are made. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Sometimes the pile that everyone's a-climbing up seems like the shiniest thing. But look in the eyes of the others you've been stepping on and wake to the light of all beings. Hope, hope, hope for the flowers. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir. Transform, embrace, and realize your power. El bosque le necesita para vivir.